Okay. Oh, these are the three? Okay. Okay. All right, ma'am.
I have one there and one over here. Not debating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Start out with roll call.
Commissioner Allen,
Present.
Commissioner Norwood,
He'll join us in a moment. He's upstairs.
Commissioner Izell, Commissioner Waddell,
Here.
Commissioner Stallings,
Here.
Commissioner Mason,
Here.
and Mayor Pink.
Here. All right. Thank you. Item number 2. At the commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the special session agenda of August 4th, 2020.
I have something.
Mr. Allen?
Department 730 Parks and Recreation, we need to replace a drink fountain at Crossland Park for $4,270. What happened to the one that we need to replace it?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I'll have to find out. I presume that it needed to be replaced, so we bought a new one.
I'm trying to remember how that dog park was. You know, and I know they cost that much because we just ordered one for the the skate park. They're supposed to be 300-pound gorilla proof, so I hope that it wasn't damaged. You know, somebody went out there and beat it up.
I'll see if I can find out during the study session so I can give you a better answer.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Any other items of interest from the special session agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to the study items. Paragraph 3, study items 3.1, discuss update on Kaw Lake Water Project.
Thank you, sir. We're here to give you an update on what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks. We've had Garney and Garver working together and doing a lot of collaboration. Where do I point it to? Make it turn. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. First what we'll do, and you'll be addressed by both Garney and Garver during this. We'll start with a little bit of progress on the program side, a little bit of design, and then go into the collaboration and give you kind of an idea where we are cost-wise, and then a schedule. Michael?
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor,
Yep.
Commission members. Hope everyone's doing well. This is a great venue. I love this building.
Yeah.
Had a chance to have meetings in the conference rooms, but never anything in here, so it's really cool. Okay, we will give you a brief overview on the program management status, remind you where we're at in the program, phase 3 of a 4-phase program. Environmental permitting is nearing completion. Survey, of course, is done, and land acquisition, which I'll give you an update on with a slide here in just a bit, is nearing completion. Of course, most of the heavy lifting that's going on in this phase consists of the CMAR collaboration, which you'll hear from David here in just a little bit, in their efforts to establish the guaranteed maximum price. Shane is here as our design manager, and his team are fast and furious working on the final design. And I heard recently, saw some schedule updates that early procurement is upon us, not actually occurring yet, but David may speak to that later as well. But those are the main activities associated, or the heavy lifting, if you will, for phase 3. The design status updates, all the plans for the major infrastructure pieces are approximately 60% complete. We are incorporating Garney's collaboration revisions as we speak. With regards to the intake specifically, it is under technical review at Garver. The pipeline segments are now ready for city staff review. The water treatment plant is pending some additional cost reduction revisions, again brought to the table as part of this collaboration with the CMAR, and then it will undergo the Garver technical review before issuance to the city staff for their review. And the Chestnut water main piece is currently ready for city staff review. This just keeps getting better and better every time I get a chance to present it. The offer packets prepared are now 228 of 230. The delivered packets are also at the 228 milestone, and a little more than 80% of the easements that we have requested have been accepted. Over 201 of those have been obtained. We have 14 that we're still working with your staff on, that have been actually handed over to the city attorney and the bridge team for their support. And then those two parcels that are associated with right-of-way easement acquisition. So very good news here. I talked to Chris a little bit about tonight's agenda and thought it would be important just to give a quick recap about really what we're building again. It's been a while since we talked about that. We've been in the details with the commission a lot lately, particularly this spring and early summer, getting the CMAR on board and some of the collaboration efforts that are necessary to meet the budget. But wanted to take a time out, a deep breath, and just remind everybody about the major infrastructure components and what we're building, and maybe a little bit about some of the things that have changed. But first of all, you'll recall we are getting the water from Call Lake. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I'll remind you that we are getting the water from Call Lake, and we went through an exhaustive alternatives evaluation on the best way to retrieve that water from Call Lake. The city had a lot of input into that process. Cost was certainly a component of that process. And what we ended up with was a landside pump station with a submerged intake pipeline or manifold system, which is reflected in that top center graphic there. That is most of you, or some of you at least, maybe all of you actually, have been to the site and seen the potential or the actual location of where the intake site is going to be. You can see that it's very well hidden, not disruptive to the residents in the area, and also not disruptive to the water body itself, because the major infrastructure is submerged once it gets to the lake. We have the next graphic there represents the 70 miles of water pipeline. We originally had identified a 36-inch pipe at varying pressure classes. Through some of the value engineering, we are now at a 30-inch diameter pipe, again, different pressure classes and some potential material changes, all of which, and I think David may speak to this later, all of which still meet the material criteria that we've established for this program without any pushing on some of those three main pillars. We're not doing that with any of the changes in the pipeline. What's actually shown here is a bore underneath a river. We've got a couple of those on this project, and we'll be able to go into more detail if we want to at a later date to talk about how that's done. The next graphic at the bottom left represents one of the booster pump station. This was added back to the project as a part of the value engineering when we downsized the pipeline. Necessitated a booster pump station along the route. The overall net of that change is a savings to the program. But this is the concept 3D rendering of the actual design, and you can see the pump station there with the electrical gear housed in that smaller little hut there. The pump station adjacent to it, and then a ground storage tank. From the booster pump station, the water is delivered to the water treatment plant, which is the bottom center graphic. It's a conventional water treatment plant with the addition of ozone and granular activated carbon. Those are some of the most important tools in the tool belt, if you will, to help us mitigate taste and odor outbreaks when or if they do occur. And then finally, that last picture in the bottom right is a picture of the corridor at Chestnut and Cleveland. Is that correct? Chestnut and Cleveland. And where we will have a pipeline going in a highly congested, very urbanized area, as many of you, all of you know. And so that's a very challenging component of the project as well. But anyway, that's kind of a broad overview, a reminder of some of the major infrastructure components that are associated with this once in a generation type project. I also wanted to spend a little time talking to you about the sizing of the program. As we go through this value engineering process, one of the main three pillars, I mentioned material. Another one is capacity. We want to make sure that we're still meeting our capacity intent with any change that may occur in the value engineering component or the collaboration component. And if you'll look at this graph here, what we have is up at the top, we have a faint blue line, which is kind of the highest demand scenario that we might see with some pretty rapid population expansion. The green bar, however, is a more realistic demand projection that was prepared by the city staff. And that's the target demand line that we have been on for several years of conceptualizing and designing this program. And what this demand line tells us is that the current project will sustain future capacity at anticipated normal growth rates up until 2053. And in 2053, we'll have to do some infrastructure additions. And that's really important that we know what those are now so that we don't box you in with the design or the construction to make these additions more expensive for future councils, 30 some odd years from now. But what those additional improvements would be is to add an additional pump at the lake, at the intake pump station, to actually upsize or replace the pumps at the intermediate booster pump station, and then do a modular expansion at the water treatment plant. So the treatment plant is designed in modular format so that you can do, the treatment plant will be at X MGD and you can do a half of X expansion, another half of X expansion at some point in the future. That next trigger for investment in infrastructure would be in 2087. At that time, we would have to replace the pumps and the electrical equipment at the intake, add 2 new booster pump stations, and then that next modular expansion at the water treatment plant. That improvement project would sustain you at your current growth rates to the year 2136. At that time, there'll be a future council that will have to deal with the capacity issues. I'm almost certain of that. Okay, that concludes the program management piece. Thanks for letting me kind of take you back down memory lane a little bit on the infrastructure pieces and the demand chart. And I'll be around for any questions after David completes his presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Michael.
So a quick update in the process and where we're at. Michael gave a very good update, I believe, as far as the design and some of the progress on those fronts. On the collaboration front, we continue to meet with the design engineer weekly, often many times per week within specific design disciplines, and then as a larger group once a week or every other week to continue this collaborative effort. It has been, in our experience, gone very well so far. A lot of good ideas have been generated, great discussions have been had, and we continue to generate ideas and options for people to look at, consider, including the council as we move this forward. So believe that there's been great collaboration between the city, Garver, and Garney to this point as we begin to reach some of the more substantial milestones on the project with a 60% design, followed by GMP and 90% design. This is important and has been going very well. I will get into some more of the details on the procurement piece on some of the next slides. As we go through this process and we work with Garver and with the city, it is important that we and the entire team maintain the program objectives. These are the same program objectives that have been talked with the council on, I think, a few occasions, but just as a quick reminder, those include the quality of water to be Safe Drinking Water Act compliant. Those include the durability of the system to make sure that we maintain at least a 30-year lifespan, and then the volume demands, which currently is established at 10.5 million gallons per day, which is the target treatment capacity for the first phase of the water treatment plant. All three of those remain intact. Nothing today suggests that we're going to have any conversations that begin to jeopardize or even begin to encroach on any of those three pillars, and that's very, very encouraging. Update on the cost estimate. We're currently in the phase between 30 and 60% design. The last conversation I think that I was here to have with y'all was just following our 30% design estimate. There have been a lot of conversations, a lot of ideas, a lot of adjustments. Through that process, we've continually updated our cost estimate based off of the 30% design with changes to date. Currently, the totality of those changes and where we're sitting today, our estimate is within 5% of the contract GMP. So that's some significant progress since the last time.
Is that 5% above or below?
It's above. We have some work to do. However, the ground that we've made up the last few months since March has been tremendous, and there are still a lengthy list of ideas and things that are being vetted through right now. Better than 42 items that are being discussed, and we're confident that just through continuing this process and working to vet out the remainder of those items that we are going to get to that target. So we're feeling very good about that. A little bit of a glimpse into the CMAR delivery milestones that are coming up. There's been a lot of focus on this point, on the important topics, the 30% design, the initial cost estimate, the GMP that's coming up. It's important, we believe at this point, to start looking beyond that a little bit and getting a little more granular on what's potentially going to start happening in the process. So starting in the month of, I'll even back up 1 month to August, but we are currently beginning to develop the procurement, the specific procurement plan and details for procurement on the project in anticipation of the delivery of the 60% set of plans that's coming in the next few weeks, at least to Garney and others, but we'll be coming to Garney for review. That's really going to start to kickstart our procurement process moving into the month of September. Once those plans are delivered, we will begin developing the 60% cost estimate that will eventually carry forward into the GMP. We will also begin in the month of September advertising for early procurement packages. What this means is not procurement of the entire project, not procurement of all of the materials and all of the subcontractors, but select components of the project will be included for early procurement. Those advertisements will go out in September of 2020. In October of 20, we will continue the 60% estimate, again, getting closer towards submitting that GMP, and we will receive sealed bids on that first early procurement package. So we're going to receive those bids sometime in late October. In November, we will be complete with our 60% estimate and compiling all of the information, including the costs from the bids received, into the GMP proposal, and be providing that GMP to Mr. Gdansky and others for review, consideration, discussions, and then look to move that forward during the month of November. Fast forward to the next part, it really starts to get exciting. Starting in December and through February of 21, our current plan would be to begin awarding those early procurement contracts, meaning actually writing contracts to those subcontractors and suppliers that provided us a bid back in October. So we would look to begin executing those contracts through December and February. We would also be continuing the procurement process. In the first round of procurement, that's some of the early out stuff. There's going to be 3 more packages behind it. Those packages would continue through December, January, February. March of 21, we would be moving dirt under that plan. So construction activities would officially commence in March of 21. So pretty high level overview of the months going forward, but some significant items in there and things to start considering as the process moves along.
Any questions yet? Okay, give you an idea on where we are on the schedule. What we're seeing is the NEPA is at the Corps of Engineers, and we anticipate that that'll go out to public review here relatively shortly, and we expect it to complete in the early or the late October, early November timeframe. We'll get the GMP in the early November timeframe. Give me a minute or two to look it over. Then we'll come and talk to you guys. Probably my goal is to do it at least twice in November. I'm hoping the schedule will help me do that. And at the same time, you notice that final design is continuing. And I believe that'll put us in a position to be ready to go to the water board in the December timeframe, as far as the things that I control. Any questions?
I have a question, Chris.
Yes.
My question to you is, you all have done a study on basically a projection for demand for water.
Yes, sir.
How did you all come to that conclusion?
Good question. Give me just a second. Let's go back to this slide. When we initially started this program, with following, unfortunately, the pointer doesn't show very well. We pulled the slide out of the original Guernsey study, and we started the design with a high demand curve, which is that light blue curve. As we went through the concept study and then phase one, thinking about how are we going to truly afford this thing, we started plotting actual versus time, and that's what that green line is. So as we started progressing down, we kept the blue line because that's the baseline. That's the baseline at which we started with on the demand. And that demand came out of the Guernsey study. Does that answer your question, sir?
Okay. Along with that question, as far as the aquifers, because I've heard for 3 years now that the aquifers are low or they're depleting or they will or whatever. When is the last time we've had a study on the aquifers to see how much water is in the ground?
The actual studies of the aquifers are done through the Water Resources Board and not by us. We have empirical data that tells us it's mostly going down. I would anticipate we would see it come up a little bit right now with the rains we've had. But I also know, driving around in the countryside, I have more and more farmers who count on that aquifer for their agricultural business and their cattle business. And so the demands on the aquifer are getting larger. And it only replenishes at a certain rate.
Because the reason why I'm asking these questions, because I get asked these questions from my colleagues, my constituents. And as colleagues, we discuss these matters, but my constituents, they ask me these questions. And I, when you look at it from different perspectives, we have the pipeline come in, the water pipeline, and we have plenty of water, but the utilities continue to rise. The cost of the citizens out there paying for the water that we're supplying them, if it becomes to a point to where it's there's a word I'm looking for. Oh God, I can't think of it right now. Not that's not it. To where it's unbalanced. Okay, I'll just use that term. To where the demand for the water is there, but the people cannot afford it. It's disproportionate. That's the word that I was looking for. It becomes very disproportionate, right? What happens if the people in Enid, the citizens, cannot afford to pay for the water, but we have the resources, but they cannot afford it? Where does that leave us as citizens here in the city of Enid? Because we're the ones paying for the water bills. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
I mean, I'm just speaking worst term scenario. What happens when the people cannot pay for the water and the water bills are so high that they cannot pay for the water? Now we have a big portion of the town without having the ability to be able to pay for their water bills. Then what? What do we do? Because this is very expensive. We're talking about $315 million plus. What do we do? Do we have something set up or some type of other resource or something set up to where if we can't afford to pay for this water pipeline, that we will still yet be able to meet the demands that the people have to have water? Do we have something else? Are we looking in other areas just in case we aren't able to pay for the water? That's my question.
Well, there's a lot of pieces to that question. We are maintaining the well field because we're blending 2 to 1, 2 parts surface water, 1 part well field. This body controls the water rates because it's in the ordinance. At some point, if that were to happen, I'm sure the next council would decide that it's time to pause for a minute on rate increases. So you've got now, when we complete this, 2 sources of water. So you have a way of working around it. As far as what do you do when it gets too expensive? I think that's really more of a commission issue.
Yeah, because what I'm getting at is, what are the options do we have? You know, do we go to purify gray water, or do we build a reservoir like in between from here to Covington, or, you know, where the area is low lying? I mean, do we have any other options that we are looking at just in case we can't afford this?
Well, we looked at the options of building a lake. And I truly believe that it would not be cost effective. And at the time we started this program, direct reuse would be very expensive and probably hard to get permitted. And so, go ahead.
Reason why I'm looking at it from different ways.
Understand.
I'm looking at it from the perspective of Garfield County. When we go and build at Call Lake, whatever county that is, at K County, I'm not sure which county is, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. We have farmers. We have individuals that own land within Garfield County. If we were able to build a reservoir, a big lake, we could keep the money home. We could keep it within Garfield County so that those that are here would be able to benefit from it, and we would have more revenue that we could spend within this county, which would actually help the city of Enid. And also, I look at it from this perspective. You look at I-35, if you want to increase opportunity in the size of Enid, build east. Because when we build that way, it's closer to I-35. We can attract more businesses and more industry. Why? Because it's growing that way, and they could get there a lot faster and a lot sooner. I mean, I don't know.
I think the saving grace plan in the event that we discover that our aquifer is more robust than we fear is that water is, as a resource, not depleting itself. So if we find ourselves with an abundance of water, sell it. Next council can sell it. They can sell it to a town, sell water rights to Fairview, to Woodward. We can sell water rights to industrial. That water is, you know, in 50 years, 100 years, water's going to be worth a lot more than it is now. You have Oklahoma, which is your Missouri case, in Florida. They're going to be fighting over water rights in East Oklahoma for the next 20 years. Because those folks know that long-term, that's a valuable resource.
Yes, sir.
So if we find ourselves with too much water, we pay for it now, but we're getting catbird seed long term because we can turn around and sell it. And I don't think there is a scenario in which what we pay to pump it out per 1,000 gallons in 30 years is going to exceed what we can sell it for on the market. So risk, we're gambling, but we're gambling to acquire a lot of a resource that no doubt is really worth it. So we're rolling the dice.
Thank you for being honest, Ben. I appreciate that.
I'll just jump in, Commissioner Norwood. Just you bring up a very good question. This is a complicated, complex project. And when we took on this project and did some studies, starting with the Guernsey Master Water Study And then we picked up with Garver specifically when we determined that Call Lake may be the way to go. That was approximately 5 or 6 years ago. 2015, I think, actually was phase one of this program with Garver. 2014, we were looking at studies with Guernsey and Garver at the time. And these projects take a long time to come to fruition. And so, unfortunately, during the time that it takes to come to fruition, these questions that we think we've answered before are fair questions to ask again. But what's driving us is the water bill going to be too high? What's driving us is what happens when we run out of water. Because when we run out of water, it doesn't matter whether you can pay your bill or not. Nobody's going to want to live here. So that's what was driving us with the droughts and the studies. And while we're clearly not in a drought right now, we were until it started raining 2 weeks ago. We don't know what's going to happen next month or next year or 5 years from now. So this program, as you can see from that timeline, is not being built for the next 10 years or 20 years of water supply. It's being built for grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Nobody will probably be in this room will be left alive in 2136, but this project will still be viable if we do it right. I know it's expensive. The commission does control water rates. So if water rates do become untenable and the revenue's not needed to pay for the project, the commission can look at water rates. So I know this will be a continuing challenge for us to justify why we're doing the project. But I also want to say that at $315 million, just to remind the commission, given our parameters at $315 million, the revenues we're projecting, we can pay for the pipeline. Of course, that takes into account the projected water rate increases and also do a minimum of $10 million of other capital improvements. And that's been our financial criteria all along. So I don't know that we really have a better answer for you tonight, but I know those are good questions.
And thank you, Gerald, and thank you, Chris. My concern is I'm in no way against the project because we need it. My concern is I just want to make sure that if it doesn't pan out for us, do we have other options? And my biggest concern as well is we need water. Yes, sir. I agree, totally. We can't live without it. But we also can't live in a way to where individuals are not able to pay their utility bill. And the utility bills get so high that a quarter of the town's water is cut off. Who's gonna pay for it then? You know, we need other resources. I don't want us to just rely on a few entities or industries. We need more. You know, there's things that we need to begin to do now to where we can have the businesses here in the industry come in. I mean, restaurants are great. You know, entertainment is great, but we need industries. We need to promote our colleges and our universities to where people will want to come to Enid, and when they graduate, they'll know that they have somewhere that they may be able to work. Then the city will begin to thrive like it should. I look at Stillwater and I look at other cities. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I get online, I get nosy. I look at Norman, I look at more. I know Oklahoma City, it wouldn't hurt them. Tulsa, it wouldn't hurt them. Lawton, it probably wouldn't hurt them. But us, you know, I just wanna make sure that we do all that we can to enable the citizens of Enid to be able to live without such a restraint and so much pressure just to be able to take care of themselves.
I'd like to make one comment to that, Derwin. As Gerald said, we make the rates. It was voted on, the rates and the increase by the voters, but we could still change that. But we've got to make sure that we can pay the debt service because, as you told us, we're taking on a lot of money, $1 million in debt. But one thing that for people that are really struggling, there's nothing that says the city can't set up some sort of funding for folks that are struggling with their water bill and have an internal system of evaluating them and giving them a break on it. I mean, we could set that up at any point in time. All we've got to do is tell them to do it. So.
That makes me feel a lot better. Thank you, Rob.
And I was asked when I started this program, was what would it take to bring 50 years worth of water to Enid, Oklahoma? This.
Hey, Chris, I've got a quick
Sure.
question. I was looking at this timeline, and if I remember correctly, we had a environmental assessment. approval.
Environmental assessment?
Is that still on track to be completed on date?
Yes.
Because that is, we have to have that done in order to get our financing, right?
Yes, that environmental assessment is currently at the Army Corps of Engineers Tulsa District under review. All the technical manuals have been provided to the federal agencies as informal earlier this summer, or earlier this spring, and we have gotten a positive response. So yes.
Okay, and then we had thought that we tapped into some lower financing rate with the Water Resources Board. Even though we've pushed out, are we still on track to get that same financing?
That's outside of my swim lane.
Yeah, I just talked to our financial advisor today, John Wolf. You know what he told me? Interest rates are at an all-time low. And that's what I hear from him over and over. Now, we got to get this loan done before that actually changes. I think he will be here next time because we're going to ask for authorization for the application so they can get going to get that submitted. So we potentially can close in December or whenever when we have what we need according to the schedule and OWRB has a meeting. So we're still in good shape with interest rates, and he'll be here next time to talk to you about that.
Then my last question was on the purchase of all the easements. It looks like we're up to, whatever that number was back here, 210 or something out of 201 out of 230 parcels.
Yes, sir.
That was the other item that tripped our ability to be able to get financing. So everyone still feels good about that.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We're in the process of discussions with, setting up discussions and meetings with DEQ to finalize those things that they're going to need to allow us to take the loan, and make sure that they're comfortable with where we're at and what we're doing. You know, the good news is we own the property that we're building the plant on, and we own 85+% of the easements. And so we're in a pretty good place.
Okay. I don't worry as much about paying for it as I do those things that come up that cause us to be off track, cost overruns and financing not.
You mean those
coming in at
nasty
the
little
rate that we're
surprises?
Supposed to. So
Those nasty little surprises?
those little surprises that come up.
Yes.
So that's why I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. And as you'll recall from our last presentation, we do have just a little bit of add in our budget.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Commissioner Stallings, I noticed that we're looking at presenting our plan to OWRB in December. Do they take a break at Christmas time? Has it got to be there by the 15th, or are you not going to get it? Or is there any time frames like that we need to be looking at?
You're asking me very specific admin questions that I have to deal with.
Well, I just didn't know
But
if
I
they.
can find that answer out for you.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure we're not planning on being there on the 21st to find out they close on the 15th till next year or something. So.
Yeah. And I
You know-
believe John Wolf is working with the water board with Joe
Okay.
Freeman as well.
All right. Thank you.
Miss a deadline.
All right.
Any other questions?
You've got a key, right?
Okay.
Okay.
That completes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3.2, discuss group home ordinance. Is that you, Carol?
Yes. Okay, why are we here? Currently, the city code recognizes group homes for developmentally disabled persons. And it provides a procedure for allowing group homes in residential districts via a use by review for those in greater density than our definition of family would allow. Our code still has a family definition of people related by blood or marriage, and those are unlimited, but there is an exception for unrelated people up to 5. So the group home situation, which was somewhat was developed after the Olmsted 1999 United States Supreme Court case that said that disabled people needed to be able to be housed in the community in the least restrictive way, or it affected equal protection. And the Fair Housing Act says approximately the same thing. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing on the basis of any protected class, which includes sex, national origin, disability, familial status, race, color, sex, or religion. Okay, so the definition of group home, so why am I talking about this? The reason why we're talking about it tonight is that Grace Care is assisting a group of seniors to develop a residence where seniors up to 10 can receive assistance in major life functions and stay out of the more intensive nursing homes. So it's another one of these Olmsted situations. So Grace Care has come to us and said, we want to use a single family home, and we want to have 10 unrelated seniors who need some assistance. And some assistance in, I'm assuming, driving and perhaps in the bathroom, that sort of thing. Okay. And under our definition of group home, it's not broad enough to include anyone other than the developmentally disabled. And the definition of developmentally disabled are those people that are developmentally disabled and are so designated by the age of 19. So the Fair Housing Act, we don't have to have this ordinance. The Fair Housing Act specifies that communities do not have to have a specific review process, but they have to provide reasonable accommodation. So in looking at our code, I saw that we were already pretty much giving reasonable accommodation to developmentally disabled persons. So my thought was to broaden out the definition of group home, to expand it to any group of people that are disabled, and allow the MAPC to use the existing formula for figuring out whether the particular house in question can we reasonably accommodate it or not, based on the type of disability and the type of people in the home. But if we don't do that, I can do a one-off. When the Grace Care proposal shows up, I can do, I can shepherd the MAPC through it, pretty much using the group home analysis. But it does seem to me that it is better to have something like that is gonna, it's easier for the MAPC and for community development to work with a plan that is on paper. So that's why I went ahead and proposed expanding the definition of the disabled to include any group that has more than one life function that is impaired. Any questions?
So Carol, there are 6 activities of daily living that if you have 2 of them, then you are eligible to move into a nursing facility. I'd like to know, how they're going to manage that. What are the activities of daily living that would cause them to go into a facility like this? Are you talking about a home in an existing neighborhood or building a home in a neighborhood?
Okay, I think this first proposal is going to be an existing home. And I think the people, from what I gathered from talking to Grace Care, it was the people are no longer driving and they probably need help in the bathroom. But they're able to get along other than that. And so Grace Care is trying to develop this. Now in other states, Grace Care could take the facility and run the facility, but in Oklahoma, those people who do home health care for seniors cannot run a facility. So it's a complicated regulation situation, but what Grace Care specializes in, and I'm really, I don't know that much about it, but from the one conversation, the meeting we had, Grace Care provides long-term help for people that need help, that don't have to go to a nursing home, but they need help. And
they provide short-term help as well. I've retained their services before.
Great.
And I'm familiar with Bob and their operation, and they're good operators. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I want to know if they're going to be, if food's going to be brought in or if they're going to be cooking on site. If you're going to help people in the bathroom, you have to have a number of handicap accessible toilets and tubs or showers and all those kind of things. I mean, there's just a lot of things that have to be in place before this would be, you know, a wise move. I'm not saying there isn't a need for it, because there certainly is. And if it would be a lot less expensive than spending time in a nursing facility, if, you know, we know that we need those kind of places. I have a lot of questions about it, and I hope we can, you know, get a lot of those questions answered.
I would assume that those questions could be addressed at the MAPC meeting when they talk about the specific location. It may be, and what I'm going to suggest is, before I put it in front of MAPC, maybe I should talk with you and we can go over the things that you think that we need to address, because this proposal isn't for a license. I mean, you know, this is not, the Grace Care one is not going to be a licensed one, and the developmentally disabled facilities were licensed, so it took care of that. So perhaps I need to utilize some of your knowledge so that I can ask more questions and make sure the ordinance covers all that, if you would be willing.
Thank you. Yes, I would.
Yeah, we're talking about disabilities, and I guess I'm having trouble trying to figure out what's the disability. I mean, old age is not a disability. And I know intellectual disabilities for the developmentally disabled, so I'm trying to figure out what kind of disability. Is it a physical disability we're talking about?
Well, there are lots of disabilities. There's disability from post-traumatic stress disorder. There's disabilities of a variety of things. This particular one that he's talking about are seniors that can no longer, I believe, get along, that a whole house is too much for them, and they're probably, their families think maybe they shouldn't be driving. So the thought would, and certainly driving and being able to take care of, you know, yourself, those are major life functions. So I am not, I believe that is what he's talking about. I know there's a group, they were not disabled, but they were seniors. I know that in Stillwater, there's a development where seniors got together and have a common house and then have little cottages and live together. Now, they weren't asking for any help under the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution or the Fair Housing Act, but because I don't think that they qualify as being disabled. But older Americans, as they age, will have major life functions that are impaired. And so I'm assuming that Grace Care knows that there is a need for this. But it could also be for veterans who have a post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't exactly know if it would be a good idea for them to live together, but or people with the deaf could qualify. The blind could qualify.
Sure.
Those disabilities, I could see it would really help them to
Yeah.
live together in a home where the improvements could be made so that they could get around and not fall or,
Yeah.
but you know, I'm just looking, I was really looking at the Fair Housing Act and trying to get our ordinance so that it would be more helpful and not discriminatory. Right now, having a special ordinance just for the developmentally disabled is like a signpost saying, wait a minute, you picked one group and not anyone else.
Right.
So broadening it, I thought made sense.
No, I agree with all that. I guess where I was having trouble was trying to associate, I can't drive anymore with disability.
Driving is a major life function.
Then can every 14-year-old live in there too?
No, that's not, I'm sure 14-year-olds will tell you that they could drive if the law allowed it. Are there any 14-year-olds?
I think
I'm
there's some
sure
90,
that would say so.
there's probably some 90-year-old parents that we've talked to that would give you the same discussion.
Yes, my mother's 91 and she still thinks she can drive.
But- okay, thank you. I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm
Okay.
just trying to understand.
So
Thank you.
Carol,
Yeah.
so to clarify, would the individuals who lived in this housing, would they have to be clinically diagnosed as having a disability?
I don't know.
That's
You
the
know.
correct answer. That is the correct
yeah.
answer. We don't know. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that you're asking here that it's very complicated. There are a number of different types of senior housing in Enid and
That's right.
all different levels. And so we just need to see what Bob and his wisdom is trying to do. And I'm sure he has it outlined quite well. So we just need to be brought up to speed on all
Okay.
that.
Well, we'll get with Bob.
All right,
Maybe you and I can talk with Bob.
that's fine, anytime.
Fantastic.
All right, thanks, Carol. Let's see, what time do we have? Okay, that's the last item on the study agenda. So we're going to take a break for about, we'll be back here and meet at 6:30. So we're adjourned.